We're live right now. Any feedback?
Turn.
Yeah,
No.
it's exciting.
Yeah.
We're getting close.
We've got a mic that's got a battery going
I
out.
know, I guess we should go. You ready to go?
I'm ready. Are you ready?
Do we get a mic?
Yeah, we've just got a battery going out and I don't know where it is.
So I guess we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Would you please stand with me and recite the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for coming out tonight to our City of Shelton Commission meeting. The first item on our agenda will be our weekly commission reports, and we'll start with Commissioner Moore.
Thank you. Today I attended part of a meeting. I had to leave a little early that at the county where the commissioners were considering the federal grant awards for low income and the homeless. So I'll be interested in bringing back a full report when I've got the rest of the meeting for me. Tomorrow I will be with League of Women Voters. I'm excited. They're going to be touring our City of Shelton treatment plant. I'm excited to show it off, and I've been assured that there will be sample bags of fertilizer to send home with everyone. So I'm excited about that, and I love showing off our City of Shelton facilities. On Wednesday, I'm really excited because I have been invited to tour the Governor's Mansion with South Sound Seniors, a group that I've done some volunteer work for. So I will be in Christmas mood at the end of that meeting. And that's all that I have for this week.
Commissioner Olson?
Coming up tomorrow, I have a Mason Transit meeting, and then I was invited to a ribbon cutting ceremony to fill in for Gary at the Play Live Gaming Lounge, a new business that's opening. And then Wednesday, I've been asked to meet with Patty Case, Heidi McCutcheon, and the representative from Forterra, who will be leading the visioning process. So that'll be interesting. And then I had one other comment I wanted to make, that last week, the judge ruled in favor of the City of Shelton in the initiatives that the Freedom Foundation was coming after us with. So we haven't heard what their next move is, but so far we're winning. So that was good to hear.
Oh.
And we had a rousing commissioners retreat that was real energetic. I thought it was great on last Friday. And then also we had employee appreciation last week, which was really cool because Leslie Ann and Vicki had organized a auction for the wellness committee, and they raised $1,100 by just getting everybody into it, and it was great. It was real fun to see all the employees out, and everybody had a good time. That's my report.
Very good. Tomorrow I will be traveling to Port Angeles with our city administrator to do a presentation to the city of Port Angeles about our coalition that we're building, statewide coalition for sewer funding. On Wednesday, I also will be meeting with Patty Case and the Chamber and Forterra to talk to them about the visioning program downtown Shelton. And on Thursday and Friday, if we have a coalition call this week, we may do that. I don't know if there is one. Okay, so that completes our weekly commission reports. Now is an opportunity, the first time, for general public comment. If someone would like to speak now is the opportunity to sign in and speak. If you want to wait till later, we have another opportunity in the meeting. So we have a few people signed up to speak, and so, okay. The first is Marilyn Volker.
I prefer to speak
Later? Or on the issue or something, okay. Forrest Cooper, would you like to speak now or? A little later? Okay, it's all right. We're a small city and we can entertain these kinds of changes fairly easily. All right, so right now at this point we are going to recess out of our regular meeting and open a public hearing. This public hearing is about an ordinance and it's going to be presented to us by our Public Works Director Greg Clark and City Engineer Mike Michael.
This is Greg Clark. Good evening, Commissioners. We're going to pass out here a few copies of the slides that was really the same set of slides that we produced last Monday, a little shortened for tonight's agenda, but contains really the heart of the matter of our solid waste rate increase that we are suggesting and entertaining tonight to take feedback on. The presentation here will be shared by both Mike and myself. Hopefully give a good overview. So if we can get the PowerPoint up on the screen, we'll move forward.
There we go.
There we go. Okay, so first slide. Go to the next slide, please. Here we go. So the overview tonight will we'll look at basically the items needing change, and then we'll go into kind of a little overview of the status of our solid waste utility, and then we'll bring the recommendations to the commission at the end that were discussed and we'll again go over tonight for the audience. So next slide. So the ordinance, there's three main components of the ordinance change, and we actually are bringing them together. Obviously, the first one is very small in change in that when we send a truck back out to pick up a recycle container, the current ordinance doesn't allow us to charge for that. It does cost the staff time, and it does cost the gas and the wear and tear on the equipment to send, and the time lost for the driver going out and repicking up this container. So this charge, like for our garbage service, if they call in and ask for a pickup, an extra pickup, we now can rightfully charge for that service. And we'll have a slide coming up on what those costs are. They're the same as an extra garbage pickup, and here they are right here. So roughly for a 35-gallon container, if the guys have to go back out, it's roughly $10.69 under the current ordinance. The next one, next slide please. We have these roll-off containers that we've got 4 roll-off containers, 2 of which are specific for recycling, 2 of which can be used for any kind of waste material. We haven't had the ability to offer those to the public or businesses for pickup. And so we needed to update the ordinance. So this includes the charge, and this is the charge breakdown to take, a customer calls in, says, I'd like to have a 40-yard container. Can I get one at my place? About $70 is the cost to get it out to the business or the customer. Then however long the customer keeps that, there's a $3.50 on-site storage, and that's just so they don't keep it forever. There's a daily charge, pretty minimum, $3.50. And so the fee is based on 5 days of them keeping that container on site. And then when they do call up and say, we've got it filled up, we'd like you to come and pick it up, the costs here are for the labor and the equipment to go out and pick up that 40-yard container, take it to get it weighed, then take it to the either the recycle location or the transfer station and go through the process of getting a ticket in that. So they will pay for the labor to pick it up, transfer it to the site, and then they will also be responsible for the actual dump fee of the turns on the weight of that particular stuff. So our particular fee is roughly about $285.
And based on this being an approximation, you'll notice in the ordinance that it's not exactly this. We kind of rounded the numbers off slightly to make it easier to administer. The drop-off fee is going to be $72.50. We've maintained the container rental fee at the $3.50 a day, and then the pickup, haul, and dump fee is going to be $175 as presented in the ordinance that you have in front of you this evening. And if you go to the next slide, we have a slight comparison here. So at those proposed rates, a 5-day rental would cost, with city service under the proposed rates, $287.79. And our other option right now would be Mason County Garbage. You can see that slightly more at $316.03 for exactly the same 40-yard service.
Are you going to have a reduced, like if they have it twice, if they have you haul and dump and bring it back? Or is it going to be the same charge every time?
It would be, each haul from that point on would be
It's
the
the same price.
$175. You wouldn't have a second $72.50.
Right.
But you would have $175 each time it's hauled out and dumped.
Okay, all right.
Correct. So next slide. So in looking at the financial status of the solid waste fund, there are basically three elements of that. The first one is just so that people know, we have not raised rates in solid waste for the last 3 years. The last rate increase was in late 2011, and since that time we have not increased rates. So this is the first rate increase. Next slide. The second element is for working capital within the fund. We need to roughly keep about $100,000 in the fund for working capital from month to month. And as we've looked at the cash balances at the end of each year, you can see here on the slide, in 2014, the end of this year, we have roughly about $181,000 in the fund. So we're okay this year. As we approach the end of next year, we're down below the $100,000. We only have about $83,000 in the fund, and that's if we do no rate increase tonight. That would be the status of the fund at the end of next year, which isn't good. Then in 16, you can see we're even further upside down because we're actually in the hole about $89,000. And a lot of that cost is associated with just operational costs and that and labor to get there. So the third element of the financial report is, next slide please, is that the operational costs, of course, every year continue to go up. Now, in doing our budget this year, we assumed a 5% rate increase for operational costs, so we just use that same assumption for 16 and 17. And so the addition, this year it's in the budget, as you'll see tonight as it's being proposed. And then in 16, if we take that 5%, it would mean roughly about $84,000, $85,000 of additional cost would be needed. And then in 17, it's an additional $78,000 above and beyond that. So those operational costs are really what are driving most of this rate increase, along with the next items to talk about. And next slide, please. This slide we did put in. This shows that exact thing of the operational and revenues that come into the fund and the end fund balance at the end of each year. So you can see here at the $83,000, we're roughly $16,000 from where we need to be. And in 16, we're $189,000 for where we need to be. And in 17, we're roughly $440,000 from where we need to be. And that assumes operational costs for 17. So the next slide. So the utility funding needs above and beyond operational costs are what we're going to look at here. We are required to do an update to the comprehensive plan as a function of the Growth Management Act. And our proposal here to try and split the costs a little bit between years is we need to do a rate analysis to look at the rate increases as we move forward. And we need to do that phase one rate increase in 2016. So that phase one, we estimated between $25,000 and $40,000. The next part of that is the second phase of that, and that's the full comprehensive plan that we need to do to look at possible landfill closures in C Street. We need to look at the operations, the fleet, all the elements of the comp plan to make it whole. And that's estimated to cost roughly between $120,000 and $160,000 to complete that plan. And that'll be dovetailed in with our full comprehensive plan, but this would be the solid waste element. Next slide. The C Street landfill, Steve Goins has indicated that his discussions with the Department of Ecology that they will need to do a study to evaluate what the closure is going to require for our C Street landfill. and it's estimated that the cost of that closure report will be about $400,000. There appears to be a possible grant opportunity for about 75% of that, which our local match then would be $100,000. And so we need at some point to come up with that funding. And is that all out of the solid waste utility? I'm not sure. It could be some out of sewer utility. It could be some out of others. I'm not sure at this point. But for the computations of the rate study here, we used $100,000. The balance of the closure, the actual physical closure of the landfill, none of the costs are here. This is just for the study to determine what would be needed. Next slide. As we look at our aging fleet, which is becoming more and more aged, we have this roll-off truck which will provide the ability to move these 40-yard containers or smaller containers. And it's a 2000, but it doesn't have that many miles on it, and we feel we can use that truck clear into the 2020 era. The real side loaders are the ones that are giving us some real problems now with repair and that. An average garbage truck should last between 7 and 10 years in a fleet before it should be replaced. And as you can see, one of these trucks is already 10 years old, and the next one's not far behind. And we should be replacing those now, but due to budgetary constraints, we can't. So we're looking at 16 possibly for this first side loader. We're hoping anyway by the end of the year that maybe we could do something there. We'll have to look at the budget next year. But and then in 17 we need to do the 2006. These particular trucks are spending a lot of time in our repair shop. They just aren't meant to last this long, but the guys have been keeping them going. But it's problematic. We lose time whenever they have to be serviced, and then you have to sometimes order parts, and they have a couple extra trucks, but it's just not working out real well. So anyway, next slide. There's been a vision for a long time, long before I got here, to do a transfer station for the recyclable materials, because they can be taken to locations where we can get more money for them than we can by just taking them out to Wilson's or out to Mason County Solid Waste. Currently, we're hauling those to Wilson, but these are just the recyclables. And to put in this small little transfer station so we can take them out of our collection trucks and put them into a large container and haul them is roughly about $150,000 to do that. I think it would pay for itself in 2 to 3 years, but it's not currently in the budget to do anything with that. And then just the overall facility needs. We need to find some storage for our trucks under cover. They sit out in the rain. The space, the office space is needing upgrades and needing some extra space. And we just need to purchase possibly some land or lease some land. So there's no money in the current budget to allow for that. So all of these things are kind of in the queue to be additional costs above and beyond operational that drive the budget. So next slide. So I'm gonna let Mike take over at this point. He kind of went through this evaluation, and so go ahead.
So, we kind of talked about how do we get there, and we gave the commission quite a few options last Monday, kind of had that interactive spreadsheet that we were looking at, and really what we heard is, what we presented is, the baseline to not go in the red, we need about 4% on our current rates. For our most typical residential customer, which is that 35-gallon every other week service, that equates to about $1.43 impact on the bill starting in January 2016. And you can see that's about a 50-cent increase in each of the 3 steps that we're proposing here. What we heard from the commission is we probably want to at least cover the cost of doing the comp plan, make sure we meet our GMA requirements. And to make sure we have revenue to cover that cost, as much as $200,000, we see a 5% increase being kind of the baseline for that. And again, based on the most typical residential, the 35-gallon every other week, it's about $1.83 impact for that January 1 bill 2016. And that comes in, roughly 60-cent increases at the 3 points that we're talking about here. So, next step. So, as you can see, we're looking at, what does that look like now for that first bill we see in January of 2016. For our service, assuming those rate increases went in, that would mean we'd have a bill of $13.40 for that January 2016 bill. Mason County Garbage, our local comparator, and these numbers are based on their most recent filing, which went into effect November 21st of this year. And actually, for their equivalent service, it's a reduction, to be honest with you, and it's gone down to $19.69 for the exact same service that we're providing to our customers. So you can see we're quite a bit under our local comparator in that rate. And it's pretty close. It varies the magnitude, but generally speaking, most of the services, except for a slight couple here and there, we're pretty well under their rates. In general, they focus on a little bit different strategic customer base than we do. Theirs appears to focus in on the 65-gallon containers, ours on the 35. So
This is kind of a repeat of what we did.
it is.
Isn't
This
it?
is really, and that's why we're kind of going through
I
it
was
quick.
just
So
curious.
this
I was
is.
wondering how quick you were going to do it. but
Yeah,
you're
we're
good.
just about to the end here.
Good.
So, basically the bottom line is the utility needs some additional revenue. Sources of that are the rates. Franchise fee is something we talked about last week, and we can definitely look into. It sounded like from last week the commission is interested in us getting some more information on that. Additional services that the utility could perform, the roll-off container service, for example. There may be others out there that we'll find as we're going through the next couple of years doing the comp plan and doing this research. And probably realistically, all of the above is what we really need to do. A little bit of rate, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So, next slide. So, basically, what are the next steps? Right now, we're recommending that the rate structure that has been presented in Ordinance 1863-1214 be adopted. That basically gets us moving so that we can get a better handle on where we're at. And then next step would be to update the comp plan in 2016 and 17 and look at those longer range needs, operational costs, and what they're going to be, capital facilities costs, and those other revenue sources.
City administrator had a slight comment, I think.
Wanted to make a comment on the Mason County garbage rate. That's the rate that they can charge. It's their franchise area. But what they would do if we got a price from them is they would come and they would give us a price. And they may charge actually less. It's more efficient to collect in the city than it is in the county because things aren't quite so spread out.
Right.
So, but I mean, it is quite a spread.
It is quite a spread. It's potential that is, it could come down. Their 35-gallon service is focused on larger developments in the county. So there is some economy of scale there, but you're absolutely right. Really, there's two options under state law. We could just give it up to the local franchise holder, which would be Mason County Garbage, or we can contract for the services either from them or any other licensed waste hauler at that point. So.
One point of clarity too is the rate structure we're proposing here, like Mason County Garbage, includes recycling every other week.
Correct. That's a good point. And actually, an additional piece there, we actually do a little bit better job of it. We accept glass in our recycling. That's not part of Mason County Garbage's recycling program. It actually goes in the garbage.
All right.
So with that, questions, comments from the commission?
What's your projected fund balance then at 15 with the 5% increase?
With 15, I would have to go back and look at those numbers. I know at the year-end 16, basically the cash we have to spend in 17, we have just enough for the 100,000 plus the extra expenses, assuming that we only do the comp plan work.
So you're saying if we increase it, you will have enough money at the end of 15 to do the comp plan in 16?
Yes, yeah, 15, we have some extra in there, which is intended to cover the,
And that'll still leave us with $100,000 for the ending fund balance in addition to the comp plan?
yes, that's correct.
Remember, at the end of 16, at the end of 15, we've only done 2 of the incremental increases. The third one wouldn't start until
January
January
1st,
16.
yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. As we had this meeting last Monday, I keep going back to the fact that we know we are going to have costs related to the C Street cleanup, and we are going to have to replace the garbage truck. I feel like I would really like to raise a little bit more above the baseline to give us more money to work with for our portion of the study for C Street. We made a commitment to the community to do that, and I think we should be ready to do that when the time is there and not have to wait for a couple more years for us to raise the rates again or raise the money for our portion of that. So I would be more interested, I think, in looking at what percent we would have to raise the rates to better fulfill what we need for reserves for those emergencies that come up. Because otherwise, we will be doing an emergency rate increase, and I don't want to do that. I would rather be, more on top of it and looking ahead and acknowledging what we're going to have to spend. So I would like to see some other numbers for how we can actually accomplish what we need to do.
Yeah, if
Get the
if
slide
we can go to the very last slide in the set. We actually heard a couple more. Oop, other way. Yep. There you go, one more. There you go. So, this probably look a little bit familiar from last week's. We heard this question could be coming up tonight, so I did a little bit of analysis. And basically, this is the interactive spreadsheet we used last week. And I said, okay, to be comfortable, maybe not meet our full fund balance goal for the end of 2017, but to be comfortable, so if things aren't as bad on cost increases we believe they, or we've projected they are, which is probably likely, and maybe if we can save some money on, say, the comp plan and other items, you know, where could we be? And that's what we have up here. And basically what the assumption of this model now is that we do buy one truck. We buy it on time. We've assumed a fairly high annual payment of $50,000, which was kind of the upper end we talked about last week, that we assumed it could be at this point. We bought that in late 15 or early 16, so our first payment's in 16 and continues from there on out, 10 years of payments. And that we start the C Street study in 16, completing it in 17. And you can see, you know, we're a little bit short of our total fund needs in 17. But we do have the conservative 5% operational cost increase and some of those other conservative cost numbers in here. And this is based on a 7.2% increase. That would bring that typical residential account to $1,425 on January 1 of 2016 instead of the $1,340, which is proposed at this time.
Mike, the numbers up here are a little bit small, but people certainly can see the colors. The red color is indicating that $100,000 of cash balance we need to maintain in the fund. The blue is the operational costs or the additional costs for both operational, the extra truck payment, doing the comp plan and those other related costs. The green is the cash position that we would be at the end. So again, and I need to get closer to see it myself, this is based on a total over the three increases of $2.68 versus the $1.83.
$1.83 is currently proposed.
So it's 7.2%, you said?
7.2%, correct.
Above the 5 by 2.2%. The incremental increases would be 83 cents in February of 15. It would be 89 additional cents at the end of July. And then in January of 16, 96 cents would be the additional, which totals up to 7.2% or the $2.68 total percent. And that would give us the extra additional, you know, revenue in the fund to do these additional things. Otherwise, we're just pretty much looking at the operational costs and doing phase one of the comp plan to stay within the 5%.
So, and if we got the rate study and found out that maybe we weren't if we raised it more than we need, because some of our numbers are, we're not sure what the numbers are going to be, then we could just adjust at that time, rather than continuing in increments upward. They may be smaller increments are not raised.
Exactly. As we do phase one of the comp plan, which is really the rate evaluation, now, we certainly haven't done the complete comp plan, but we'll have a better idea where these rate increases are in relationship to the cost that we're seeing. This fund is onto itself, so any money that goes into the fund, it stays within the fund for solid waste management. It doesn't get used for anything else in the city. It's onto itself. So having a little bit of a reserve is not a bad thing. And as we, of course, move forward and have the needs of the organization for solid waste anyway, you could reduce it, but it would maybe be better to have a little bit in savings, so to speak.
So is this solid waste program totally funded by rates?
Correct.
Just by these solid waste rates.
Okay.
I would probably respectfully ask my commissioner to my left to think that one part of our decision has to be based upon the economics of the city of Shelton. For years, we've been in a holding pattern. We've not gotten all the things we've wanted. And that what we have to remember is that the people that we're serving, it would be nice if they had a reserve fund too in their accounts. And by raising more than what I think is necessary, it just continually hinders their ability to have that reserve fund in their checkbook too. So I think it's wise in an economic climate where the city is getting some businesses and where we're getting some money coming into the city to start making some of these little bit more advanced purchases for capital improvements and things. But I would just say that if we had a 5%, 5%, 5% plan, which I said okay to, I think, last week, that I understand that, yeah, there's going to be more maintenance. Yeah, those trucks are probably going to break, but go to every single department in the city that we've kind of held on here, you know. And I would just say I would respectfully disagree with going to the 7 and the 6.5, just because I would not want to vote for it. We're in a holding pattern until we see some money coming to town. And so I would support the 5% for 3 years, and I can see we're going to need some bigger improvements later. But in 3 years, I would certainly hope we have some economic engines in this town that are going to produce some income to give us a little bit more confidence in what our budget's going to be. So that's kind of where I am on that.
I have a question about that. So in the case that we don't build up the additional reserves and we don't have any money to do the matching for the C Street, what happens then? I mean, we're just not able to do it? Or what if the garbage truck breaks down?
The easy answer is we dig into those reserves, and potentially at the end of the year, we don't have enough reserve there to meet finance's cash flow needs for the utility. The $100,000 came from finance. It's obviously a round number, but it's a number that they're comfortable with based on what they've seen year to year that they need to kind of carry over to make sure that the utility can pay its bills. So yeah, without money above that in there, an emergency like a truck breaking down or an immediate order to do a study of some sort, we potentially wouldn't have the funds to cover those additional expenses at that time.
Realistically, if it was an emergency situation, we'd probably bring the commission a recommendation on how to get out of the hole, which may involve borrowing money possibly from another fund in order to make up that difference that was needed immediately. But
in the case of the study for C Street, I don't know, we would not be able to accept a grant, or that program would just stop if we didn't have the matching funds?
usually with the grant, it's an application process, and one of the things you have to do as an agency is commit to being able to meet the match funds. I don't know, Steve, if you have any additional information about this particular grant, or?
Thank you. The indication I received from Ecology was they identified some funds that were unspent that were, I guess, directed to other jurisdictions for this type of activity. And I couldn't tell you how long those funds may be available before they would decide to take those a different direction. It would be impossible to forecast that, but I think it would probably happen sooner than later if we informed Ecology that we didn't have the reserves and we couldn't meet the match funds and we couldn't forecast when that might occur. I think at that point they would likely start to look for another jurisdiction to hand that money off to complete some other cleanup in another area.
I would probably say that I would be open to change my position in the favor of the possibility of the $100,000. But the $100,000 would not translate to 7%, 7%, 7%. How much would the 100,000, what would that be if it was a 555? How much would that, if for the C Street?
I didn't run those numbers for this evening. I ran, a kind of a mid-range conservative number for the 100,000 plus the purchase of the truck. I could actually have that spreadsheet open on my computer up there, and I could go run it pretty quickly and get an answer.
Well, from my position, we are committed to the C Street cleanup. If we had a $400,000 study, which to me obviously is offensive to me, I mean, but
Me
you
too.
know, in reality, that's what we got. And the city only put $100,000 and we had a $300,000 grant, and that was available today. Then, I mean, all I'm saying is I just hate to raise anything more than we really got to raise right now on the ratepayers, because that's my mantra or whatever. So, but I recognize Commissioner Moore has a point, especially on that. Probably not the new trucks, but on that issue, if I knew it was a 5%, 5%, 6%, or 5%, 6%, 5%, 5%, I would probably possibly go along with that. But we have an ordinance here for 555 tonight. It'd have to be rewritten, and I don't know your time frame on that.
It is a fairly short time frame. We have publication issues and everything to meet February 1 effective date that we're shooting for, which some of this scenario, some of the funding is based around. We did think through it, and, if Mr. O'Leary are interested, one of the thoughts we had earlier is this: we potentially could suspend this hearing until after the new business, give me time to run upstairs, make an adjustment to the ordinance, and then we could continue and finish at the end of the new business session, if that made sense to the commission. I would guess keeping them relatively equal like we've been doing, it's going to be somewhere in the 6% range. 5% gets us just the comp plan work, 7% gives us a truck and the C Street for about 200,000. So we're somewhere right in the middle of that scenario.
What?
Mr. O'Leary, did you want to weigh in on this conversation?
I didn't raise my hand, I'm just thinking.
Yeah, I was just wondering what you thought about what Mike Michaels was presenting.
We have a public hearing, so I guess if you could just put this on hold, stop the public hearing. I'd want the public to have the benefit of Mike's information before you open it up for public comment. So they've got all the information rather than just what's been presented
Sure.
thus far, because then you'll get information that may be different after they've made the presentation. So I don't know, it's your call as to how you want to do that.
Well, let me ask a quick question. If we were to pass this one, if it's a 5.55, 5% for 3 years increase, that's what that's what this ordinance is about?
It's actually 3 steps over 2 years, but yes, it's correct. It's 5%
Okay.
in each of those steps.
Right, okay. If we did that, would there be a way to address the C Street landfill on a different issue, different way? I mean, I just, Tracy's right that we have an obligation to look at that, and we have we don't have a lot of money, but, so, I mean, I guess what I was saying is maybe we ought to just pass this and then possibly readdress that at another time, because What do you think, Mr. Goins? You got an idea on that one? I'm looking for some input here on some ideas, because I'm not sure how it would work.
I have very limited knowledge of the numbers on how that might play out. The ability to have reserves to respond to any and all of these kind of things you're talking about, I think are very important. And it would be unfortunate to sort of miss the boat on an opportunity to get a partner like Ecology to help us with the study on C Street. I would point out that the difference between a 5% and a 6% increase in this particular case is less than a quarter.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind as you're continuing your contemplating your options.
Okay. Any suggestions from my fellow commissioners?
So if I'm, Mike hasn't said anything yet.
Yeah, what do you want to do, Mike?
You know, once again, you know, we're back in the conversation about let's not do anything, let's wait. And you saw where that got us with sewer and water. You know, we wait, and then it bites us in the butt. You know, then we're stuck with having to do an emergency or a huge increase. So I guess I would lean towards what Commissioner Moore is saying. If we can accomplish the same thing for, you can say less than, 50 cents or something, if we can come up with the money to do C Street when the grant hits, it just makes it, we're making money. You know, if we don't have to dip into our own pockets for this $400,000 study when we can do it for $100, I think it makes sense to bite the bullet. Nobody likes a rate increase. You know, it's just the fact of life. If you want to develop, you want to grow, you want to do things that are necessary for service of the city, you got to pay for it, and nobody's out there handing out money. Ratepayers have to do it. So I would be in favor of if that's the way we want to move up the 7th.
All right, then I guess yes, Mr. O'Leary.
Just one more thought, that one of the things I try to do in my position is think long-term. And the reason that you have the study is so you figure out what work you need to do, which is also going to be expensive. So the dollars that you accumulate for the study is really just a down payment. And then you've got, so there will be more coming on the heels of that too. No one knows how much it's going to be because we haven't done the work yet to sort out what's there and what needs to be done or maybe not need to be done. Maybe there isn't as much there as we thought, but again, until we get people on site. So from my perspective, I like that you're thinking about that, and it was easy for us to put it off because we're trying to minimize the rates, is what you said. But on the other hand, you know, it's a pay me now or pay me later. If you pay me now, it's a little less.
Well, another point
Long-term.
is we haven't had an increase for 4 years. You know, if we'd have been doing it like we've always say, we should have been doing it gradually all the way along, 3% a year.
3%
we wouldn't
a year,
even be doing this right now.
5% a year, right.
So I don't see a point
Okay.
of shorting ourselves anymore.
It appears we don't want to accept this 555. We want more information, and maybe it'll be a little bit more. But I think we need to either postpone this hearing for later in the program, if you think you have time to get that information.
Well, we do have an alternative. Minimum to get the comp plan. And we were looking at one truck and probably the C Street. So we have actually right here prepared an alternate version of the ordinance with that scenario. Just in case.
But you don't have one. But you don't have one with just the C Street, because the truck is that's my rubbing point, just a little bit.
And if that is the direction the commission would prefer, then yes, we would ask that you suspend the public hearing for a short time while we go prepare a third draft
That-
with a slightly different.
Okay, well, what you have there, excuse me, Tracy, what you have there may fly real well with my fellow commissioners, and then we can end this right now. If they feel they want the truck and the C Street, then we can continue forward and possibly do this. So, at the moment, I'm into me stretching to the C Street expansion. I can do that, but at this point, I probably wouldn't go with the new truck. That's where I am, so.
So that one you have there says Dear Santa on top of it, right? Oh. Um,
I'm in favor of the 7% one. If you take a motion or a vote to change that, or can you just do that?
So I have extra copies of the version, it's actually 7.2%,
Right.
the one we presented, but
Right.
I do have copies of that ordinance with that table in them right here.
So will you please remind me that, so the 7%, what are those the increments that you just gave us, that the rate increases?
Yes, 7.2.
Those are the ones-
That's the one we showed in the,
83, 89, and 96.
exactly.
I think that we really need to be proactive, and I am sorry that it means a rate increase, but I feel like that would save in the long run. I do believe that it can be adjusted if it turns out we don't need that. I don't think we're going to be wasteful at all. I think we would have a lot of difficulty explaining that away. So I would be in favor of the 7% too.
Okay, so now we need to change this ordinance or something, because this is, I think, written up for the first 555 or whatever,
Just
so.
got it there.
So you got a different ordinance, right?
I have copies of it that I'll, if commission likes, I will pass out.
So what Mike's handing you here is the same ordinance, just the computations in the rate tables are based on the 7.2%. That would give us the funding for one truck payment, the additional comp plan costs, along with $100,000 to secure the grant through DOE, should that be offered to us.
Okay, and it's the same ordinance number. We're
Yes,
just replacing
everything is
the
identical,
table.
it's just that the numbers in the tables reflect the rate.
Before we make our final decision, there is supposed to be public testimony on
Yep,
this. If
Your
anyone would like
Honor,
to
before you get there.
Yes.
We've got copies of this distributed. They made enough copies for the staff, but there's no copies for the folks out here. So I'm a little worried about that. Yeah, that'd be good.
You can have this one.
So,
Here's an extra one.
We'd like copies. 1, 2, 3, 4.
All right, why don't I guess we can move on to other business here. We're almost an hour on this subject. I don't know how we do that. Recess out and then recess back in?
that's probably the smart way to give people a chance to
Yeah.
digest that.
Okay, so you can make the copies, and we're going to...
So we'll move on to another item, and then we'll come back to this
Okay,
after
so
a
what we're
couple
going to do
items.
is, we're going to close this public hearing at the moment. Or no, we're just going to recess out of it? Yeah, I'm not
Yes.
real good at this.
Yes.
Recess out. So we're going to recess out of this at the moment and move on to other business. Thank you. Okay, the next is consent agenda. There, Leslie Ann, could we please have a reading of the consent agenda?
Consent agenda, payroll warrants numbered 72662 through 72838 in the amount of $629,052.50. Vouchers numbered 84701 through 84790 in the amount of $612,470.49. Resolution number 1074-1214, a resolution of the City of Shelton, Washington, amending the framework for financial recovery and sustainability. 2015 work plan and 2013 through 2018 strategic plan.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move we approve the consent agenda.
I second that motion.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The agenda passes. There is no old business at this time, but there are some new business items, and this is an ordinance that Mr. Dave O'Leary and Kathy Byerly are going to be presenting to us, and so I think if we did that one,
This is really simple. This is the same that we presented last time we did the public hearing. We just bring it to you in ordinance format. So no changes from the last time. So we're recommending that you approve it.
There is a public comment period on this action. If anybody wants to speak, it would be, now would be the time. Any comments from my fellow commissioners on this budget?
No.
Nope. Nope. Okay, so it appears at this time that staff's request is to have the first and final reading today that will adopt the 2015 final budget. And if the commission concurs with this request, that we can request Leslie Ann to please do the first and final reading of ordinance 1862-1214. Right? Yeah, could you please do that?
Ordinance number 1862-1214, first and final reading. An ordinance of the City of Shelton, Washington, adopting the budget for the year ending December 31st, 2015.
I'm requesting a motion to approve this ordinance.
I move that we approve ordinance 1862-1214, adopting the budget for the year ending December 31st, 2015.
I second that motion.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The budget passes. That ordinance passes. Next is about the MACECOM facilities lease rate change is going to be something brought forward by our Director of Financial Services, Kathy Byerly.
Good evening, Mayor Commissioners. This is, what you have before you is the amendment number 1 to the existing MACECOM facilities lease. And what it does, it sets the rates. Now, these are the rates that are set for 2014. So this has been to the MACECOM board, and they approved it at their December 9th meeting. What will happen is these rates will reflect an adjustment for 2014 for them of about $2,300. And it's already been reflected in the projections of the 2014 budget, in the 2015 budget, the projections for ending fund balance for 2014. We've already given the MACECOM their adjustment in the year 2014 for the 2013 adjustment, and that was about $1,500. So staff recommends that Amendment 1 to the MACECOM facilities lease is approved by the city tonight. Do you have any
Okay.
questions?
There is a public comment on this possible action here, so if anybody from the public wants to speak about this MACECOM lease, feel free to come forward and sign in. I don't see anybody at the time. At this time, I invite my fellow commissioners, if they have any concerns or issues about this, to speak. Seems like a pretty straightforward operation here. So, let me make sure, yeah, that's right. Okay, so I guess that we would, it would be enough information to go ahead and approve amendment number 1 to the MACECOM facilities lease 2013-2015 tonight. So I guess if the commission agrees, we probably need a motion on that. It looks like a motion. Do I hear a motion? I can't make the motion.
Okay.
I need a motion.
Yeah, I will do that. I move that we approve the MACECOM facilities lease rate changes. Is there a number I need to give?
Yeah, it's
Amendment number
1.
Oh, okay.
is amendment number.
Amendment number 1 to the MACECOM facilities lease, 2013 to 2015.
Okay.
I'd second that.
There's a motion and a second to approve the MACECOM lease rate, and all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? That passes. Now, we're on a roll. I wouldn't mind continuing going through the next 2 ordinances and then going
Okay.
back to our public hearing, but I don't know if the others will be that easy. Maybe we better not. Maybe we ought to go back and just go back into that public hearing. Are you ready, Michael? You are? Okay. I thought we were on a roll. I wanted to keep the roll going.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, it's out of here. Maybe we should do Shelby's, that'll be quick. The next one.
Yeah? Well, he said a minute or so, so I don't know. Let's go back into that public hearing thing. Let's see if we can't get that thing taken care of. Okay, so we're now going back into the public hearing and considering the solid waste issue.
And just in case I missed anybody that wanted, I do have a couple extra copies here, so.
Okay, so it appears we are ready to probably vote on this. And we had public comment? Yes, oh, please, come forward. Marilyn, you're already signed in.
Marilyn Vogler, 420 East Poplar. I have a history with you all of supporting rate increases and speaking to that matter publicly. It's more difficult in this case, not because I object to the rate increase. I don't even object to the 7.2%, and if you wanted to put in 2 trucks, I could probably go with 8. But really, rather on a couple of matters of principle. In the first place, Mayor, you just alluded to the economic condition of Shelton.
Yes.
And yet in the presentation, we heard something that really disturbs me, and that's that one of the things being considered is moving the contract for recycling away from Wilson, spending $150,000 eventually on a transfer station, to someplace where we can get more for the recycling. Wilson is a local company. They have hired a number of new employees since they took on Shelton's recycling contract. Taking our business elsewhere because we could get more money is no different than my ignoring ProBuild at the foot of my hill and going to Home Depot. I really urge you to let staff know in some way that we have to consider buy local not only for the residents, but for the city government, for our businesses as well. Second matter, I've spoken to you before about the importance of having everyone, including businesses, recycle. How can you, in the context of the C Street dump and all of the problems that is causing now, continue to send from Shelton, and we're not physically doing it, Mason County is, or other carriers, tons of material into some landfill someplace because you all haven't told businesses they have to recycle. We don't have to provide the service. Other providers do that. All we have to do is say something as simple as, no person or commercial establishment shall place any materials that are recyclable in any city-owned garbage refuse container other than a designated recycling container. And so, while I don't object to the fee, while I see franchise fees as a good idea, I also think anybody who is franchised to recycle in Shelton ought to follow our recycling guidelines. Mason County needs to figure out how to recycle glass if they're going to recycle in Shelton. This is an issue that I think needs to be addressed. We can't wait to recycle comprehensively until a 2016 plan, a 2017 plan may be implemented in 2018 or 19. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Someone else like to speak to this issue? Tom Davis, have you signed in?
I have not.
You can sign in and speak now. Forrest Cooper, would you like to sign in? Did you sign in? All right. We'll let Tom speak first, I guess. See how he's standing up. He's standing up already. That's how we do it. Huh? That's how we roll on that
Can I
one?
speak and then sign in?
Yeah, you got to sign in. Well, you're supposed to sign in. Leave that thing here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just sign in.
It's two things, and so I'm confused.
Okay, well, sign in before you speak, and I'll keep your time off until you speak. Give you that added seconds there.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. I totally agree with Marilyn said, and it touches on something I'd like to actually take it a bit further. And we're looking at various alternatives, how much we're going to raise these solid waste charges for residents here in Shelton. And I actually wanted to speak and get it in an entirely different direction. I feel like the trial begins after the execution. So my feeling is that it's an enterprise fund. Solid waste is an enterprise fund, and no one handles enterprise funds better than the private sector. I'm not sure the city really wants to get involved in the long term or in the longer term with being in the solid waste business. There's certain advantages, and usually I speak actually for the city or the county to get involved in water and sewer and solid waste. But in this case and in these times, I'm not so sure it's a good idea. And I don't think, I think you need to kind of look out beyond the city and think of maybe putting out some RFPs for some suggestions. I don't know if that's been done. We've talked a little bit about what the comparable fees would be, for instance, for Mason County garbage, but they haven't been to the table as far as I know and haven't submitted a proposal within the city limits, which I would imagine would be considerably less than the costs involved in collecting solid waste in the county, simply because of the geography. So before we commit to this buying new trucks, and then maintaining them and seriously being in the business of solid waste for the long haul, I would kind of suggest that maybe we want to entertain looking at a local provider who's experienced in this. I mean, we have Wilson Recycling, as Marilyn said, and we have Mason County Garbage. They seem to be doing a good job. And we have long haul waste haulers from the transfer station, and those are from the private sector. So why are we in the business? Why is the city in the business? Does it pencil out? Does it make sense? And I think as far as the C Street dump, as much as I want to see that closed just as much as everyone else, is that really part of this? I think it's two separate issues. Could we not make more money in our franchise tax to go toward the C Street dump? Having a solid waste business is expensive, and the expertise for curtailing those expenses is usually within the private sector. So I'd hope that we'd at least entertain that before we committed to the long-term business costs of being in a business that I think should be in a private sector. Thank you.
Thank you. You're the best on getting that 3-minute in. You come right in on, you've had some experience of doing that. Okay, Mr. Cooper, would you like to come and speak?
Thank you so much. Mayor, Commission, my reason to go after Tom is because he's a great speaker, and also Marilyn too. I'd just like to chime in on a couple things on this particular issue. One, I do agree with them. I was really excited when Wilson's took over this last year. I thought that was just so wonderful to see all of that go into a local business. And I would hate to see that disappear and leave. But on another note with this, I am a dual ratepayer now, I'll call it. I have a building downtown, a business downtown, and my residences here in town. So anytime a rate increase comes in, I take 2 looks at it just to kind of see exactly what it's going to, how it's going to affect not only myself, but also the community around me. And so the first thing I did is came over to the city to find out more of what this meant. And I got some great information. I spoke to one of the senior planners who gave me some wonderful information on it and explained a little bit more about why we need these rate increases. I was unable to attend the meeting last week during the presentation, so that was good to hear. So I understand a little bit with having to increase stuff. The one area that it just kind of gets me about this, though, and I just want to ask this question before I make this statement, is I understand this, we're going to have 3 rate increases, one in March. I asked Mike this at the beginning. One in March of 2015, one in July of 2015, and then one in January of 2016. And those were all proposed 5%. You guys keep throwing around the 5% number, which has now turned into the 7.2% number. Why does anybody not see that as being a 15% increase? And actually, it's not even that. It's more like a 16.6 or 17% because it's exponential. You're now raising on the rate that you already raised on. And then after that, we're going to raise 5% every year after that. Why can't we just put that out there? I mean, this is all within less than a year. It's not 5% over the next 3 years. It's all within a year. Am I correct on saying that? I mean, that's what's proposed, right? So if that's the point, why can't we just come out and say that up front? So everybody's very clear as to what exactly the rates are going up to. So then if you have somebody who doesn't attend the meeting or go to the city and find out the information like I did, they heard 5%, now they're going to get really upset because there's a 17% increase, and they're like, but you said 5%. Why does that have to be that way? I understand, I've heard it used before with the sewer, with the water, again, other rates that have been raised. Now, putting it out over years, that makes sense. Like if you have an increase this year, and then next year there's going to be another increase, and the year after another increase. That's a way to kind of soften it on the ratepayers. And I understand that wholeheartedly. But when you start doing those multiples less than a year in spans, that seems like really deceptive to me. It seems like more of a way to make your proposal sound better. So I just want you to take that into consideration and consider that when you start talking about those numbers like that. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Anybody else from the public like to speak about this issue? Seeing none, are we ready for to do the next step here, I guess? Let me see where my paperwork is. All right. I think we did open back up the public hearing. So we're still in the public hearing part of this. And so it says here I can invite my fellow commissioners to speak if they'd like to, more about this subject.
Just a point for Forrest there. I agree that it does seem kind of strange to do it that way, but along with the presentation, they also put it into a dollar amount so that people can, I think people relate to that better when they say your rates are going to go up $1.70 or whatever, I guess it's now $2.68 a month by January 1st rather than the percents. So it is kind of out there. It's a little more easily understood that way, but I do agree that it does seem kind of strange to have the percent, but I always relate it back to numbers. And I think most people relate to it better that way.
Yeah, and we didn't do it. I mean, this is presented by staff in this way.
Yes,
So,
from them
I mean,
us,
we're
yeah.
not, I mean, I'm just telling you, man, I don't control their world, so I just kind of do my thing. Did you have anything else you wanted to write on that there?
I think Greg has.
Clarification?
Not specifically on that. We aren't trying to hide anything. We put the numbers out there. They are what they are. Cumulatively, I'm not sure the percentage you quoted, but it is a three-step increase. The one thing I did want to relate is the business we do with Wilson Recycling. The reason we're taking our recyclables there is really the haul distance and the time and the turnaround time they're able to provide us at the facility. They don't pay us a dime for the recyclables. That is all, money they get. So if we can haul the recyclables and, get funds for those, it makes good sense to the utility to do that efficiently. But for right now, I just wanted to clarify that we don't get any money back for the recyclables we do deliver. And we're not taking garbage there, just recyclables.
And from I will say one other statement here, that from my perception with working with these two commissioners, one thing I think we do all agree on is that we like smaller increments every year. I think we are not into that, but we don't know what's going on all the time on that particular fund. It sounds good. I hear in different cities I've been to, they say, and we haven't raised rates for 5 years. And I says, well, you should have. I mean, you got to kind of raise those, but the citizens want smaller incremental ones, and they want you to handle the money wisely. So that's where we are on it. I don't think there's any, I didn't like it when we raised 38% on the sewer rate in 6 months. Mm-hmm. That was huge money. And that's why I formed a coalition to try and get some big grant money. But on this issue, I think we're getting close for this commission to make a decision. So we've had public testimony here. We've had our chance to speak. So I think we have enough. Are you guys open for me to close this hearing?
Yeah.
Yeah? Ready to vote? Okay. So it's staff's recommendation to have a first reading of the ordinance. And the only question I have is I'm going to vote against it. So I don't even see any motion thing here. I just want to let people know that I'm not in the mood to buy new trucks in this economic environment. That's my position. So it looks like, but two commissioners are, so we just go ahead and have the reading and know that Gary had his chance to speak. Thank you for the opportunity. So we have first reading of this ordinance 1863-1214 tonight, and place a second reading it on the consent agenda for December 22nd, 2014.
Ordinance number 1863-1214, an ordinance of the City of Shelton, Washington, relating to solid waste service and rates, amending Shelton Municipal Code sections 8.08.010 through 8.08.130, and adding a new section, 8.08.132.
All right, thank you. We have two more items, I think, on the agenda.
Make sure for the record that
Yes.
we were talking about
The second ordinance, 7.2% increases. Okay. That's what we have agreed upon. Okay. Now, is that clear? Okay, now we are moving into another ordinance.
We may need to come back. Kathy just noted the technical issue. We may need to put this on old business for next week and make some technical changes.
Okay, we want to be legal and prudent, and so, should we make a motion to put this under old business?
We'll bring it back on old business.
Okay, you guys can do it? All right, I trust you. Okay, ordinance, this is number 4 item, and this is something Mr. Steve Goins is going to bring before us, and it's from the Community Economic Development Director. Is that not, oh wait, sorry.
Attention.
This job is stressing me out. Number 3, item number 3, we forgot that one. Shelby, come forward and save me.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. As you know, the city has an agreement with the City of Forks for jail services. However, that agreement has expired, so tonight I'm bringing a proposed renewal of that agreement. The city contracts with the City of Forks and with Nisqually for jail services due in part to the overcrowding at the Mason County Jail. There's a chart at the bottom of the first page of your briefing document reflecting the cost for 30 days in custody for all 3 facilities. The cost in Forks is the least at $45 per day. The expired contract required a transportation fee of $20 per person unless the number to be transported was 3 or more. The proposed agreement does not have a transportation fee. It does, however, have an annual escalation clause based on the Seattle CPIU. As a result, if accepted, the cost beginning January 1st, 2015 will increase to $45.90 per day. Should you have any questions, I'm happy to respond to them now. Otherwise, the recommendation is to place this on the consent agenda on the 22nd and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement on behalf of the city.
Any questions or comments?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward. Save money.
Okay, sounds good. So we'll follow staff's recommendation then and put this on the consent agenda for December 22nd, 2014. Thank
Your
you,
Honor.
Shelby.
Thank you.
All right, next, Mr. Steve Goins is going to bring forward another ordinance.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Have a couple exciting items for you tonight. First one is an update to our abatement strategy. What we've adopted in the past, giving you some background here, is as part of our strategy, we implemented a update in our codes that allowed us to address nuisance violations. And those violations were an array of different things, and they're listed in the code that we felt this tool would help us to achieve compliance. And so far, in our efforts to utilize that, we've been pretty successful. We identified the need to have a similar approach for certain types of building violations where our objective was to achieve compliance and to ensure that the building was safe, that people weren't harmed, those types of things. So we are proposing this modification, and I did have a PowerPoint here that included some graphic illustrations of the types of things we're talking about. So again, the code that is addressed here resides in the Title 8 of the Shelton Municipal Code now. We're adding an additional item that would expand the types of elements this would address to unsafe building conditions. So just as a kind of a point in describing how this works, this is the type of items that our current code will allow us to address, where there's obviously a vector control issue here. There's some safety issues. This particular residence, in fact, there was a fire on the stove, and the stove had a fair amount of debris on it, had to be removed so it could even be identified as a stove. Our code allows us to address these kinds of issues now, and maybe moving to the next one. This is also the type of issues that our current nuisance code allow us to address through different measures. If someone has a structure that's obviously uninhabitable, we can take measures to ensure that's either remedied or abated, and we have a process to do that. The next slide, though, shows you some various conditions that our current nuisance violation doesn't really address. This is an example of a stairs that was built. You can probably see it looks to be there was a window there. The structure was changed to allow a door to be placed there. There were no permits issued for this, but more importantly, the railing that's there has a couple issues that brought some concern. It's not very well attached to the stairs, and we're not certain that if someone was to actually be slipping and fell and was relying on that to arrest them, that it would actually do that. They might fall down. There's some other issues with this particular item, but this is the type of thing where we felt if this was a commercial building or an apartment building where people are relying on this to have access, it would raise some concern to us. Next slide. This is a structure where the owner was excavating out in the bottom to create a basement, and the result here is they've exposed some of the plumbing and waste piping, but also they've supported the structure with these small base footings and these steel beams, which in the long term is a bad situation to have. This isn't very seismically stable. Those connectors can move around, and obviously this was done without a permit as well. Getting the owner to bring something in that meets minimum code is our objective here. So the next slide. This is a kind of unusual case. The structure in the back has a number of code violations, but one of those is I'll point to the little shed roof that's on the side there. That connects to the fence that they share with their neighbor, and you can see that the water that would come off the roof is shedding onto the neighbor's property. So that type of thing, we'd like to have a mechanism to more easily remedy that. Next slide. This is a structure that was brought to staff's attention through a complaint, and in this particular case, the file for the property indicated there was a single-family residence there built some time back, and above the garage there was a storage area. You can see that that's been converted over time to a residence. In fact, we were made aware that the access to that residence is a pull-down stairs inside the garage. We felt that was a very high concern because there were also children living in there that may have no way out other than jumping off that deck if they needed to get out of there in an emergency situation. Next slide. This is one that I think doesn't get a lot of attention, but it probably should. This is not a very good picture, but it illustrates a propane tank and a heater that's inside a facility. They're using that to heat the facility. If I go to the next slide, carbon monoxide is a toxic gas that would be part of the emissions of that type of arrangement. Hundreds of people are put at risk every year through something they probably aren't even aware of they're doing. But the emissions from that type of heating arrangement can bring some sickness and sometimes death to the unsuspecting people that just aren't aware of the danger they're putting themselves in. So we're thinking and hoping that this would allow us to have a mechanism to more quickly deal with these kind of situations and efficiently remedy them as part of our code amendment. We are open to suggestions on how that's phrased. The language that's in the ordinance sort of speaks for itself. We understand there might be some concern with that, and we're open to suggestions here. Our recommendation is to consider this and to have a first reading if you so choose tonight.
I have a question. What is the difference between this and what we already have? We have a building inspector that sees these things, and he can go and address them, can't he?
Good question. The current mechanism we have is a stop works process that attracts fines, but it isn't very easy to enforce in terms of getting a court to take action on that matter. If you have an uncooperative property owner, it may be very difficult to actually get compliance. And we've had a lot of trouble with our prosecuting office making those kind of cases stick. With this process that we're proposing that's linked to our nuisance violations, basically you're getting a ticket. And now you have to either remedy the ticket, or if you ignore that long enough, you'll end up in front of the judge trying to explain why you did what you did and let the chips fall where they may. The ability to kind of remove that from a process where we're maybe collecting fines, but really not getting a lot of reaction to an uncooperative property owner, to one where if they choose not to cooperate, they might find themselves in front of a judge, makes a lot more sense to us.
Questions, comments?
Not yet.
Okay. I think we're still going to talk about this issue a little bit. The other thing, what I was reading, I read in your explanation, and obviously these cases you showed are dangerous or not right, and they should be taken care of, and the people have to do that. But I'm afraid with the wording and the way it's written that there may be some legal, I'm afraid it might need to be refined a little bit. And that's because in yours it said that staff is proposing provisions for enforcement and abatement to be expanded to include unpermitted building activity, okay, that's all right, resulting in dangerous and or unfit structures not in compliance with the International Building Code. Okay, so I can understand those issues that you did, but probably there isn't a building in Shelton that meets the current building code. I mean, most older buildings here, aren't going to be up to, some are single pane glass, that would require double pane glass. Some may, and then when I went on into the ordinance and I actually read here, it talks about the violation of city building development regulations, sole discretion of the city. I have a question, who is the city? Is it the building inspector? Is it the city administrator? Is it Steve Goines? I mean, who makes that determination? And that with all of these I was talking to a lawyer today a little bit about this, and in all of these kinds of additions here, lots of times there's some exceptions that might take place. And so I'm just asking that there might be a little clarification on that item number 13.
Sure.
I'm just not sure, because it seems that if this means that someone could walk into any building downtown Shelton and say, I want you to bring it up to the International Building Code. Well, they just walk from building to building to building, because every one of them wouldn't meet that.
Thank you for bringing that up. And again, the overarching objective we had was to include language that would allow us to enforce these types of code violations in the same manner as those other nuisances I described. And at the risk of completely throwing our city attorney under the bus here, she came up with this language in concert with some discussions with the prosecutor's office about what they would like this to say to make the case work for them. I think I've tried to make clear what our objective is, and we're open to suggestions on how to refine that, but this would really be helpful for us in terms of the efficient attention this would get with, well, like I said, otherwise uncooperative property owners, to help remedy a situation, particularly in commercial buildings or multi-residential buildings where you have tenants, you have other people that have a certain expectation of safety.
A point also to Gary that, you know, if a building is old and has single pane windows, there's no compliance in, they're not going to go in and tell you you have to bring it under compliance. If you pull a building permit, then it triggers those things, but I don't think we're going to be sending out Kelly to walk around the town and find buildings that are in violation. I think this really arose from an incident with the fire department on that illegal triplex that, you know, there was an obvious public nuisance and a public health issue there, and I think that's where most of them are going to come from, is if there's an incident. Kelly's not going to go out and look for these things. I think if they're brought to the attention of the fire, you know, just like the commercial buildings all require a fire inspection every year. In my opinion, I think any multi-residential unit should have a fire inspection every year. We're not going to go as far as requiring it in single-family residences, but I think that when the public safety and health are at stake, I think it's our responsibilities as leaders of the community to make sure that these are done. You know, public safety isn't just policemen. It's fire and building codes and policemen. I think all those should fall under, you know, as a commissioner of public safety, that should be your concern also, that we have a mechanism for dealing with people who aren't going to cooperate. And I don't think any of these are written so stringent that anybody should feel threatened that somebody's going to come knocking at your door. But if you have a fire or an injury or a situation at your home that requires aid and assistance, that's when I think these will get triggered in.
Thank you for telling me what I think. I appreciate that, and what I should think. Tracy, did you want to weigh in on that at all?
Well, I guess in reading it, it looks like what we are concerned with, going by your examples as well, as the blatant health safety issues that not that innocent seriously in danger. So you're not talking about little like fences or things unless they would create a fire danger or something like that?
That's the objective, and as you're all discussing here, there's, I think, a spectrum of the different types of code enforcement activity we encounter.
Mm-hmm.
Our objective here is to kind of start with the environment where people's health and safety is at risk. There may be some other tools that we could use to deal with some items that are maybe less severe. And the example I cited in the slides where there was a shed that had built onto the property line, one of the elements of that was the material that was used to span that distance was well under what typically would be allowed if someone was to pursue that. And the concern, the safety concern, was that over time the rafters would deflect. They would start to bend.
Mm-hmm.
And as they bend and as they contract, they might eventually pull away far enough from the level of support that's at the building and just fail. And they might fail at the wrong time. They might fail when there's a snow load on there. They might fail when someone happens to be standing under there. So that the risk may be small in that case, but there was enough of a level of concern to bring it up. It wasn't just the fact that water may be shedding on the neighbor's property. It was the fact that probably this thing's eventually going to fail, and it might fail at the wrong time. There is, again, a spectrum there, and our objective is to really target the most severe cases. We only have so much time in a day anyway, but we want to try to do the best we can to more efficiently do what we do.
So this is just another level to a mechanism that we would have already.
It would enhance the mechanism we have to include these types of things as part of an overarching public nuisance.
Okay.
I would add that if those issues and the ones where it's public safety is obvious that children's lives are in fire, and if that was really it, that I tend to think it could be written a little bit better, and maybe some exceptions, maybe who is the city, a few things like that. I have some concerns legally that if we put this in print and we go with it, because I'm not a lawyer, but I know a lawyer that had a couple of ideas about it today. I don't think we have to rush on this week. I would love to put this under old business, have me a little time to possibly even talk to our attorney again, maybe even, I don't know, did you want to speak, Heidi? Okay. Could you please sign in and then give you an opportunity to speak to us? So I guess I wouldn't mind putting under old business and having another chance at this, because lawyers aren't builders, and lawyers aren't necessarily into construction, and they write laws on things. And I just think, reading between the lines, it looks like there's a lot of power given to the city to bring things up to the International Building Code. I'm concerned that, if what you're looking for, I think we could write something that would address that, and we could do exactly what you want to do. So Heidi, you want to speak for 3 minutes?
Yes, Heidi McCutcheon, 215 West Railroad Avenue, Shelton, Mason County Chamber of Commerce. We, on behalf of the Chamber, we do have some questions about this. It seems to be fairly liberally worded, and while the IBC is pretty strictly written already, and rightfully so, we have some concerns about the specific verbiage of this. What I would like to request is that the City Commission gives us some time to talk with some other cities, see if they have a similar ordinance to this, and what some of the good and bad things are on this. This could be something that could be either really good for business, or it could be really terrible for business. So I would like to request that you give us some time to look at it and kind of do some homework, and perhaps even provide some feedback as to cities that have enforced something similar, what their feedback might be. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak to this issue? Yes, Marilyn?
I signed
You
in
already
for this
signed
issue
in?
as well, yeah.
You can do it.
Marilyn Vogler, 420 East Poplar. Tonight is my night to wonder what on earth the commission is up to, I think, if you consider this.
Here we are.
I have serious concerns about this. Among other things, you said Kelly won't be going out looking for these things, and yet 2 of the photographs we saw were pictures taken driving by, a roof that's running water over a fence, and the stairs that had flat railings on them. I understand the difference between multifamily homes, apartment buildings, and private residencies, but you all scuttled an ordinance that would have required rental property inspections. How do you separate what is public property and what is private space? How are you going to discover these things? I didn't elect you to have you protect me from myself. And I'm really concerned about violations of residential privacy. I'm concerned about long-term possibilities, and Steve, forgive me, but if you have a roof or a weak roof that's dripping water, trust the homeowner to say, oh, I see that's pulling away, I will fix it, rather than step in and assume that sometime down the road there's going to be a problem. I too am bothered by the sole discretion of the city. It seems to me this is a very heavy-handed approach that's so broadly written. It might be a good idea with the right kind of people and the right kind of staff, but once an ordinance is on the books, you don't know who's going to be in those offices 5 years from now or 10 years from now, or what the tenor of the city might be. So I really encourage you to use existing abatement procedures, to use building inspectors, and stick with the processes that we have, rather than step into this kind of expansion of government rights over private citizens.
Thank you. Anyway,
Tom's gonna-
yeah, Tom, did you want to get into this one?
I'm afraid so.
Okay. Come on, Tom.
To end the evening agreeing with Marilyn.
I'm praying for a less than 2-hour meeting, so let's see how you do on helping me on that
I'll
one.
be briefer than 3 minutes. These are already code violations we're talking about. We're just now trying to get some instrument in place or a mechanism in place so it has teeth. The county itself is doing something along these lines, and they had exactly the same situation as you have currently, where there were code violations but no teeth in their enforcement. And as a consequence, they wound up with 1,125 code violations in arrears that have yet to be addressed. So they have gone down the road that you are on now, and they have realized the error of their ways. Because once this is kind of like the broken window theory, once this is accepted as the norm, when people walk down the street and tourists and so on walk down the street and they see what is an obvious code violation, never mind the safety hazards also, it gives them an image that is not conducive to where we want to go as a community, and it doesn't make us seem that much more desirable. So I would say yes, if you're going to have an ordinance, then you need to enforce that ordinance. And that's all this is. This is the logical step to enforce your code violations. And the fact that it doesn't, it could affect human life is just all the more reason for you to put some teeth in it. Now maybe you want to nuance the ordinance and maybe you want to fine tune it, but you don't want to take the teeth out of it altogether so it's meaningless. We have enough of those ordinances on the book. The idea is for this is to make a better community for all of us and to improve our image overall and also improve the quality of life. Otherwise, people being people will do what they can get away with to a larger extent. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so.
I got a little extra comment to make
Sure.
on that. If you read any of the codes, they all state that everything is enforced minimally. They're not out making you do it overboard. So Marilyn's comment about somebody building onto that fence, that maybe they would have known that. Well, if they would have known that in the first place, they would have never done that type of construction. So these codes are in place to protect people who have no knowledge. And like I said, the levels we reach are minimum. There's a lot more that could be done to increase that. So it's not like we're out there trying to build, I don't know how to really say it, the top of the line. The minimum code is fairly easy to achieve, and people don't know what minimum codes. I don't think a summer goes by that you don't see an article or a news report where some deck is pulled away from a house with 30 people standing on it. Builder built it. Well, he built it to the minimum standards, or it was a homeowner who didn't pull a permit, who didn't know the minimum standards. That's a safety and health violation and an issue. That's all we're trying to do. As Tom said, we need a way to enforce these things. I agree, maybe some of the wording can change, but I wholeheartedly support enforcement. I'm in the business. I've been in it for 30 years. There's always a joke amongst all builders, and I'm sure Gary can attest to that. We've seen it all. And a lot of it's been done by a homeowner who didn't know what they were doing. And when it affects a business, or if it's in a business, and business owners aren't exempt from this, they're going to do the minimum. And at least we can meet the minimum of what the code says, not just what the homeowner or the business owner assumes is the best way. So once again, I support this. We can tweak the language all we need to, but I think it's a great tool to have.
Okay. Mr. O'Leary?
I think that I'm a little concerned about, in the sole discretion of the city language, and I'm not sure what to do with that. But I'm not sensing that you may not be that far apart, as long as we can differentiate where we're going to go and not go. The mayor makes a point that you don't find very many businesses that don't have violations to the building code, if for no other reason than they've changed over the years. So how is it that I'd like to see us get some more definition of that. So we've got a standard that we can touch and feel, rather than something we have to make a judgment about that we may not have to. So, do you guys feeling that?
Well,
I mean, you said something like that,
I just need
Mike.
more time myself. I just want to put on an old business, and maybe the chamber's going to have some suggestions. Maybe Steve will have some suggestions. Maybe we can look at some other cities or something. I don't feel comfortable with that paragraph because I think the devil's in the details, and there might be some things in here that I'm not sure about. So it hit me like a ton of bricks when I read it. I said, wait a second, and so all I can say is, I think we can get to something that we can all agree upon. Nobody wants, decks that are falling on people and killing people, but I just don't, the way this is worded, I'm not comfortable with it. So I think we just need to put it under old business. That would be what I would think.
I would be fine with that too. And I do agree that reading over the other things, it's all fairly subjective. I don't know how many enforcements we have on spilled garbage waste. I mean, I know that that is part of what we do, but the language on number 13 does seem to be quite a bit stronger and not as subjective as the rest.
Okay, so if the commission concurs, then we will place this under old business next week. And I don't know, we could put it under old business again. I mean, if we haven't come to a decision, but I don't think this is something we have to decide in like 3 days. So that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I think this
Okay.
is pretty clear direction. We don't have a deadline we're trying to meet here at all.
Okay. All right? That seems to be what we can do at this time. Okay, last thing is Mr. Goins is going to present another resolution to us.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Another fun item for you here. As you're aware, the state has imposed a Growth Management Act on most jurisdictions that have chose to comply. Our region is subject to our 8-year update, and I've had discussions about a process using the checklist that the state provides to identify items that we need to update in our plan. In concert with that, we had an audit last year that focused on our land use regulations, and one of the items that was identified that they'd like to see us complete is a public participation plan for this process of updating our comprehensive plan and the associated development regulations. At our November retreat, I presented some options for different components that a public participation plan might contain. We had a dialogue about that, and the outcome of that is what you see in the packet, this public participation plan. It goes in a fair amount of detail and it describes what our objectives are, whose responsibilities and roles are in this process, as well as all the different elements that we saw through that workshop and in our discussions that we should try to include in this plan. And without getting in too much detail on this, the heart of the matter really lies in the pages 7 and 8. And really before I go further, I should caveat that I was working really hard with a program I'm not that familiar with to try to get this document wrapped up. And one of the things that I couldn't quite get a resolution on was the page numbering. So I hand wrote all the page numbers in the bottom. Yeah.
Creative touch.
Yeah.
I like it, Steve.
Yeah, we liked it, Steve.
Yeah, I didn't like it. I was spending a lot of time trying to figure that out. This identifies the steps that would be taken, and in steps 6 and 7, which are on pages 9 and 10, it kind of really gets to the heart of what we talked about and really defines what would happen. But I'm skipping over some of the objectives, and I don't mean to do that, but I think that it's pretty clear that what we want to do is try to reach out to our community, try to engage them in this process, and do that to the best of our ability. Our resources to do that are limited, so part of the discussion was, what do we think we can do? And this identified a number of measures that we would take to engage the public about what's going on, inform them on when meetings are, help get feedback on the process. And one of the elements that we described that I think will be very successful is surveying the public through social media and having the ability of getting a survey going online, whether that's SurveyMonkey or MindMixer or some other mechanism, to get a feedback on what is concerning the public, how they feel about the process, and how they feel about how we're presenting the plan. And that's part of the feedback we would get at the end as well. How well did this plan work? Did you know about these different meetings? Did you engage yourself? Why or why not? And that's part of the overall objective here as well. Step 7 includes a timeline. That timeline is well within what the Growth Management Act allows us to do. But it's a lot of work, and it's over an 18-month process. But this is something we want to take our time and engage the public in. Part of the components of this was to revise the plan in stages, bring those pieces back to the commission for further discussion and consideration, instead of sort of doing that and having one process where we consider all of those items. Do that in sort of stages, and then have a hearing at the end of the process where all those different elements are adopted into one document.
I approve.
So,
I'm ready to vote.
I don't know if I have anything else I want to add, but our objective, again, was to try to engage the public. We feel the plan does a good job of that, and if there's any elements you want to add or talk about.
Any other questions or comments for Steve?
No, it looks really nice.
Nice. And you put your author name right in the front. You put written by Steve
I put it in small text, though.
I saw it, man. Authored by Steve Goins.
No, it's a really nice looking
Looks good?
document. I like it. I agree with what it says as well.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so I think we are in agreement that we place this resolution 1075-1214 on the consent agenda for December 22nd, 2014. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And now we have administration report.
No report.
No report. General public comment period. We've heard from everybody twice. I think you want it. You have to sign in, and then you got 3 minutes, young lady, right there. No problem. Everyone gets 3 minutes unless we give them twice to speak. They get 6. All right. State your name for the record. Okay.
326 South Fifth Street, just down the road. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm going to speak on an old subject that the hammer just keeps hammering away. The squeaky wheel keeps squeaking, but I know that it was voted on last Friday. The 2 commissioners voted to have the sidewalks to nowhere go in. The saying sidewalks to nowhere, I'd rather have sidewalks to somewhere. You can go down some of these streets and you see a chunk of sidewalk. What's on the end of them? Nothing. They're dangerous. They're ugly. They do not make walkable neighborhoods, and if anything, I'd like to see no sidewalks if we can't afford to put them in. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments.
Just a point of clarification on that. We did not vote in the ordinance. We eliminated a budget request. We have yet to deal with that subject.
Okay, thank you. Got to clarify.
And we have talked it to death, and we will continue to talk it to death. But we're getting close to the end of this meeting, and that's the good news. So let's, okay, administration final touches. We're right down to that time.
Just a touch that's not on the purple sheet, but I'll be bringing it next week. We're to the point where we need to, in order to facilitate our lobbying effort for our coalition, we need to bring the lobbyist on board, and I'll be back with the report on that next week. I think Greg has a report also.
Okay. Any other?
Yes, Mayor, I have 2 items to touch on. One is we'll be bringing forward next week a final acceptance on our HVAC system down at the treatment plant. And the second item is we want to amend an agreement. It's an opportunity we have with Green Diamond to allow us to continue to spray when we don't use our dryer, the biosolids and spray them on the spray field. Green Diamond land, we want to extend that agreement 5 years.
Okay. Very good. Our next meeting will be December 22nd, 2014 at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. This meeting is adjourned. Under 2 hours.